noble Oisín, O son of the king, who was best indeed of valour in battle, relate to us now without grief how thou hast lived after all the other Fenians. I will tell thee that, O new-come Patrick, though sad to me to speak of it aloud. 'Twas after the hard-fought field of Gavra where, alas, was slain the valiant Oscar. One day as we the Fenians were all assembled, the generous Finn and all that survived of us, though sad and sorrowful our converse after our heroes had been laid low, at a hunt on a misty morning on the circling shores of Loch Lean, where there were trees most fragrant of bloom and music at all times sweetly sung by birds. There was roused by us the hornless doe that was best in bounding, running, and all activity. Our hounds and dogs were all close after her in full chase. It was not long till we saw a swift rider coming towards us from the west, a youthful maiden, who was most beautiful of countenance on a graceful white steed, most fleet in movement. We all halted from the chase at the sight of the countenance of the royal lady. Wonder seized, Finn and the Fenians had never before seen a woman so beautiful. There was a royal crown upon her head, and she had a dark brown mantle of costly silk stamped with stars of red gold covering her shoes down to the grass. A ringlet of gold was hanging down from each yellow tress of her golden hair. Her blue eyes were clear and cloudless as a dewdrop on a blade of grass. Her cheek was redder than the rose, her complexion fairer than the hue of the swan upon the wave. Sweeter yet was the taste of her little mouth than honey that is taken mixed with red wine. A cloth wide, long and smooth was covering the white steed. There was a saddle adorned with red gold, and she held a gold-bitted bridle in her right hand. 4 shapely shoes were under him of yellow gold of the finest quality. A wreath of silver he had in the back of his head. Not in the world was there a better steed. She came into the presence of Finn and spoke in a tone gentle and earnest, and said, O King of the Fiends, long and from afar has been my journey. Who art thou thyself, O young queen, O woman best in figure, beauty and countenance? Relate to us now thy story from the beginning, and tell us thy name and thy land. Niamh of the head of gold is my own name, O most valiant Finn of the great hosts. Beyond all the women of the world I have gained fame, and I am the fair daughter of the King of Youth. Tell us, O gentle queen, the cause of thy coming over the sea from afar. Is it thy husband who has gone from thee, or what is the trouble that is on thee? It is not that husband has gone from me. Never yet have I been pledged to any man, O Fenian, king of the highest fame, but affection and love I have given to thy son. To which of my sons, O blooming maid, hast thou given love and liking? Do not hide from us now the whole cause, but tell us thy trouble, O woman. I myself will tell thee that, O Finn. It is thy lovable, handsome son of the hard weapons, high-minded Oisín of the strong arms. He is the hero that I now speak of. What is the cause for which thou hast given love, O beautiful maid of the glossy hair, to my own fair Oisín beyond all others, seeing that there are so many high princes under the sun? Not without cause, O King of the Fenians, have I come from afar for him, but I received an account of him, of his excellence, of body and mind. It is many a king's son and high prince have offered me love and lasting affection. I never consented to accept any man till I gave love to the valiant Oisín. By that hand on thee, O Patrick, and not shameful for me to tell it, there was not a part of me but was in love with the beautiful maid of the glossy hair. I took her hand in mine and said, moreover, with sweet-toned voice, the kindest welcome I give thee to this land, O lovely, youthful queen. Thou art the brightest and fairest of bloom. 'Tis thou I should prefer for wife. Thou art my choice above the women of the world, O kindly star of the brightest look. Commands that no true heroes do not regard, I impose on thee now, O generous Oisín, to come with me on my horse, and thus go away to Tir na Nog. It is the most delightful land to be found in the world, the land of most renown now beneath the sun, the trees bending with fruit and blossom, and foliage growing to the tips of the branches. Abundant in it are the honey and wine, and everything good that I had seen. Decay shall not come upon thee with time. Thou shalt not see failure or death. Thou shalt get feasting, play, and drinking. Thou shalt get music most sweet on harp string. Thou shalt get silver and gold, and thou shalt get also abundance of jewels. Thou shalt have 100 swords, and no deceit, and 100 mantles of satin of costly quality. Thou shalt have 100 steeds, most swift in battle. Thou shalt have with them 100 keen hounds. Thou shalt have 100 suits of armour, and shirts of satin, 100 cows, and also 100 calves. Thou shalt have 100 sheep with fleeces of gold. Thou shalt have 100 gems that are not to be found in this world of thine. Thou shalt have 100 handmaids, young and mirthful and bright and glorious as the sun, of the best features, figure, and complexion, whose voices are sweeter than the song of birds. Thou shalt have 100 warriors, most brave in battle, most accomplished too in feats of activity, armed and equipped before thee if thou comest with me to the land of youth. Thou shalt have a protecting, well-fitting corselet, and a gold-hilted sword of most cunning stroke, worth 100 swords in the hand of a true hero. It's like your land has never seen. Thou shalt get the royal diadem of the King of Youth that never yet was given to anyone under the sun, bright, brilliant with precious stones, whose worth cannot be put into words. Thou shalt have everything that I have said to thee, and utter delight without sorrow, without weeping. Thou shalt have beauty, strength, and power, and myself ye shall have for a wife. Refusal at all I will not give, O pleasant queen of the tresses of gold. Thou art my choice beyond the women of the world, and I will go with delight to the land of the young. On the steed's back we went away together. Before me sat the maiden, who said, O Oisín, let us go softly at the first till we reach the opening into the great sea. Then arose that steed with strength, and when we reached the edge of the strand, he shook himself then for the journey, and let forth 3 neighs aloud. When Finn and the Fenians saw the steed swiftly going in his course, and turning his face to the strong sea, they uttered 3 cries of grief. O Oisín, said Finn, weak and faint, my grief is that thou art going away, leaving me without a hope to see thee come back again, to me all triumphant. His features and beauty changed, and he let fall showers of tears which drowned his bright face and bosom, and he said, My woe, O Oisín, thy going from me. O Patrick, a melancholy event was our parting from each other then, the parting of the father from his own son. Sad and weak am I through having to tell it. I kissed my father tenderly, lovingly, and the same mark of affection I received from him. I bade farewell also to the Fenians, whilst the tears poured down my cheek. Many a delightful day I and Finn and the Fenians with us in full glory were playing chess and carousing and listening to music, a gallant company, or hunting in the pleasant glens, our sweet-voiced hounds being with us. Another time we were in the rough battle, slaughtering warriors full vigorously. O vain Oisín, quietly leave treating of thy valiant deeds amongst the fiends. How didst thou go to the land of the young? Continue now for us thy story without a lie. We turned our back to the land, and our face directly to the west. The smooth sea ebbed before us, and filled in swelling waves in our rear. We saw wonders on our way, cities, courts and castles, bright palaces and fortresses, splendid, sunny mansions and royal dwellings. We saw also by our side a hornless doe bounding swiftly, and a red-eared, vigorous white hound hunting it boldly in the chase. We saw also, 'tis no invention, a young maid on a brown steed with an apple of gold in her right hand, riding over the top of the waves. We saw a short distance behind her a young horseman on a steed most white, dressed in cloth of purple and red satin, with a gold-hilted sword in his right hand. Who are those two I see yonder, O gentle queen? Let me know. That woman of the beautiful countenance, and that graceful horseman on steed most white. Take no notice of what thou shalt see, O gentle Oisín, nor mind what thou hast yet seen. They are all as nothing till we reach in earnest the land of the young. We saw next, away, far off, a bright sunny place, smooth-fronted, more fair of shape and look than all else to be found in the whole world. What kingly, most bright fortress, most beautiful of all eye has seen, are we approaching now, and who is the high prince over that fortress? It is the daughter of the king of the land of the living who is queen now in yonder fortress, whom Forver of the blows of Drumlochach took away with him by the great strength of his arms and by might. Bonds she imposed on that robber, never to make her his wife, till she should find a knight of true hero who would give him battle hand to hand. Bear sway and blessing, O gold-haired Niamh. I have never heard any music that was better than the most sweet word from thy honeyed mouth, though great grief it is to us to hear of a woman of her rank being so treated. Let us go now to visit her in that fortress, and it may be for me it is fated to slay that mighty warrior by feats of strength, as was my custom. We went then to the fortress, and there came out to us the young princess whose splendour was equal to the sun's, and she gave us 100 welcomes. There was a robe of yellow silk on this queen of the lovely complexion. Her skin was fair as the swan upon the wave, her cheeks the colour of the rose. Of the colour of gold was her hair, and her blue eyes clear without a mist. Her little mouth of honey was of the berry's hue. Each slender brow was clear cut into shape. We then sat down, each of us in a chair of gold. Much food was placed before us, with drinking horns filled with beer. When we had eaten enough of food and tasted many sweet wines, the gentle young queen spoke and said, "Listen to me quietly." She told us her whole story fully and fairly, and the tears fell on her cheek, and she could never return to her own country whilst there was a mighty giant still alive. "List, be silent, O young queen, cease from thy grief and weep not, and I swear by my hand to thee that by me shall fall that murderous giant. There is no hero at all to be found now, however great his repute for valour throughout the world, who would give battle hand to hand to this fierce giant. Alas for me! I tell thee, O fair queen, that not terrible to me is his coming against me, and if he fall not by the strength of my arms, then I will fall in thy defence." Not long till we saw coming the mighty giant, most hateful of look, clothed in skins of deer, with a club of iron in his hand. He saluted us not, nor bowed to us, but glared into the face of the young maid, his captive, declared battle and stern conflict against me, and I went forth to encounter him. For the space of 3 nights and 3 days we were engaged in that tough struggle, but though stout was the great giant, at last I cut his head off him. When the two young maids saw the great giant lying powerless on the ground, they uttered 3 cries of delight with great exultation and rejoicing. We then went into the castle. I was bruised, weak and faint, my blood flowing full freshly and coming swift and hot from my wounds. The daughter of the King of the Living came quickly to my relief, poured healing balm into my wounds, and immediately I was well and strong. We buried the big man in a grave earth deep, wide and clear. I raised his headstone over his grave and wrote his name upon it in the Om of branches. We took our meal joyfully and merry were we then after it, and in the castle warmly covered beds of the feathers of birds were prepared for us. On its morrow, at break of day, we awoke from our slumber. "It is fitting for me," said the king's daughter, "to set out without further rest to my own land." We dressed without delay and took our leave of the maiden. Grieved and mournful were we after her, and none the less was the sunny maid after us. It is not known to me, O gentle Patrick, what happened that young queen afterwards from the day we parted from her, or even if she ever returned to the land of the living. We turned our back to the castle, with our steed under us in full course, swifter to our mind that white steed than a March wind over a mountain's ridge. It was not long till the sky darkened, and the wind rose and blew in every direction. The great mad sea kindled terribly, but there was no glimpse to be seen of the sun. A while we were anxiously gazing at the dark clouds and on the stars that sometimes showed, when suddenly the wind and storm abated and brightly shone, Phoebus, above our heads. We saw then at our side a most lovely land, all blooming, beautiful, smooth, clear plains, and a royal castle, very splendid. There was not a colour of all I had seen, of bright blue, of green, and of white, of purple, of red, and of yellow, but was to be found in that royal palace that I am speaking of. There were on the other side of this castle bright sun-warmed dwellings and mansions, all made of precious stones by the hands of cunning craftsmen and noble artists. What bright lovely country is that yonder, O gentle maid of the tresses of gold, a country of the fairest aspect eye has ever looked upon, or is that the land of the youth? It is indeed, O generous Oisín. No untruth have I told thee about it. There is nothing of all that I have promised thee, but may be seen by thee for ever. It was not long till we saw, coming towards us from the castle to meet us, 50 warriors, the strongest and handsomest, and of the highest fame and of character. There came to us after that 100 young maids of the greatest beauty, in silken garments adorned with gold, welcoming us to their own land. We saw next coming forth a band of the very choicest troops, and an illustrious, powerful, mighty king, best in figure, features, and complexion. A yellow shirt of the smoothest silk was on him, and over it a bright cloak adorned with gold, and on his head a glittering crown of gold, shining and brilliant. We saw coming next the young queen of the highest fame, and 50 maidens sweet-voiced, modest, and the fairest form in her train. When they had all come into one place, thus kindly spoke the King of Youth and said, "Here is Oisín, the son of Finn, the chosen spouse of gold-haired Niamh." He seized me then by the hand and said loud enough for the whole host, "O valiant Oisín, O son of the king, 100,000 welcomes to thee. This land in which thou hast arrived, its virtues I will not hide from thee. Truly long and lasting shall thy life be, and thou shalt be young for ever. There is no delight of all the heart has ever imagined that is not in this country for thee. Thou mayest, O Oisín, truly believe me, for I am king of the land of youth. Here is our fair queen, and here our daughter Niamh, the golden-haired, who crossed the smooth sea for thee, to have thee for her husband for ever." I gave thanks to the king, and bowed low to the virtuous queen. We did not delay longer, but there entered the palace of the King of Youth. Then came the nobles of that fair city, both men and women, to greet us. There was feasting and festivity there continuously for the space of 10 nights and 10 days. I was married then to gold-haired Niamh, O'Patrick from Rome, of white croziers. Thus was it I went to the land of youth, though sad and sorrowful for me to treat of it. Continue thy story further, O Oisín of the golden words, O Oisín of the warlike arms. How didst thou leave the land of youth? I feel it long till thou revealest the reason. Tell me too with great kindness, hadst thou any children by Niamh, or wast thou long in the land of the young? Tell us the story now without grieving. I had by gold-haired Niamh children of the fairest complexion and greatest beauty, best featured, best shaped, brightest hued, 2 young sons and 1 fair daughter. O pleasant Oisín, continue thy story, and tell me where thy children are. Tell me their names without delay, and the country they are now living in. Niamh held for them the land of youth, the land of the living, and the land of virtues, a rod of lordship, and a crown of kingly gold, and a wealth of gems I do not mention. Gold-haired Niamh gave to my 2 boys the names of my father and my well-beloved son, Finn, the illustrious and victorious, and head of the hosts, and Golden Oscar of the deadly weapons. I myself gave to my fair daughter, with the consent of most lovable Niamh, in virtue of her beauty and great sweetness, the true name, Flower of Women. I spent there a long-lasting period, 300 years apparently, and more, till at length I thought within myself, I should like to see once more Finn and the Fenians alive. One day I asked leave of the king and of my gentle wife, gold-haired Niamh, to go back to Erin again to see my father Finn and his great host. Thou shalt get leave, said the lovely woman, though woeful the subject thou hast broached, for I fear thou wilt never come back again during thy lifetime to my own land, my Oisín of victory. What cause for fear have we, O sunny queen, when the white steed shall be at my will? He will easily show me the way, and I shall return to thee safe. Remember, O Oisín, what I am saying. If thou layest foot to smooth ground, there is no return for thee ever again to this lovely land where I am. I tell thee again without falsehood, if thou alightest from the white steed, thou shalt never come again to the land of youth, O golden-haired Oisín of the victorious arms. For the 3rd time I say to thee, shouldst thou come off thy horse, that thou wilt be a blind, withered old man without strength or spirit, unable to run or bound. I think it woeful, dear Oisín, that thou shouldst ever go to green Erin again. She is not now as she was of old, and thou never shalt see Finn of the hosts. Thou wilt not find in Erin eastward any but fathers of orders and troops of saints. Then, beloved Oisín, here is my kiss to thee. To the land of youth, woe, woe, I fear thou wilt never return. I looked with sorrow into her face, and a shower of tears fell from my eyes, O stern Patrick. Even thou wouldst have pitied her, to see her tearing the tresses of her soft golden hair. But she put me under strict bonds to go and come without touching ground, and told me that such was their power, if I should break them, I should not return safe. I promised her everything faithfully, that I would do all she told me. I mounted the back of the white steed and bade farewell to the people of the castle. I kissed my gentle wife, and melancholy were we at the parting. I kissed also my 2 sons and young daughter, who were in grief shedding tears. I then prepared myself for the journey, and turned my back to the land of youth. Swiftly the horse rushed away with me, as he had done before with me and gold-haired Niamh. O Patrick of the orders and of the saints, a falsehood I have never yet told thee. There is now for thee the substance of my story and how I left the land of youth. If I could get abundance of bread as I used to get at all times from Finn, I would pray to the King of Graces that thou mightst be saved for ever on account of it. Thou shalt have food and drink and unstinted now from me. Sweet to me the words of thy lips. Continue thy story still for me. Our tale is not told minutely about everything that happened to me, till I come back again to green Erin of the many gems. On my coming then to land, I gazed minutely in every direction, and then I began to fear really that no tidings could be found of Finn. Not long and no great while was I standing, till I saw, coming towards me from the west, a great cavalcade of men and women, and they came up to me. They greeted me kindly and sweetly, and wonder seized each one of them on seeing the size of my body, my figure, my look, and my countenance. I inquired then of them if they had heard that Finn was alive, or if anyone else of the Fenians still lived, or what calamity had happened to them. We have heard men treat of Finn for strength, activity, and valour, that there never was his equal in person and mind and fame. Many a book is there to be found amongst the sweet melodious bards of the Gael, of which we could not easily tell thee, that speaks of the deeds of Finn and the Fenians. We have heard that Finn had a son of distinguished beauty and form, that a young maid came hither for him, and that he went away with her to the land of youth. When I heard that speech, that neither Finn nor one of the Fenians now lived, a faintness and great grief seized me, and full gloomy was I after them. I did not stop them in my course, but forthwith I went away swiftly, rapidly, and turned my face straight, direct, to renowned Alvin of Broad Leinster. Great was my amazement then, that I could not see the court of Finn of the Hosts. There was nothing in its place truly but weeds, chickweed, and nettles. Alas, O Patrick, and alas my woe! An empty, useless visit was it for me, with no tidings whatever to be got of Finn or of the Fenians. 'Tis that has left me in sorrow for the rest of my days. I will follow up the story for thee, O Patrick. After I had left Alvin of Leinster, there was no dwelling place in which the Fenian had ever lived that I did not visit eagerly and anxiously. In passing through Glennis Mole, I saw a great gathering there. 300 men and more were before me in that glen. One of the herd then spoke to me and said with loud voice, "Come to our assistance, O kingly hero, and release us from this dire difficulty." I then came up to the spot, and there the crowd were labouring under a great flag of marble. The weight of the flag was bearing down upon them, and to cast it away from them they had no power. Some of them who were down under the flag were bearing miserably crushed with the distressing weight of the great load. Many of them lost their senses. Then one of the stewards spoke and said, "O youthful kingly champion, relieve at once our men, or a man of them at all shall not live. It is a shameful word now to say, seeing the number of men that are here, that they could not with the entire strength of the crowd lift that stone full stoutly. If Oscar, son of Oisín, lived, he would seize that stone in his right hand. He would send it with a cast over the heads of this crowd. No falsehood am I accustomed to speak." I leaned to my right side and seized the flag in one hand. With the strength and vigour of my arms, I cast it 7 perches from the spot. With the exertion of hurling that very great flag, the golden girth of the white steed broke. Full swiftly I came to the ground on the soles of my 2 feet. No sooner had I come down than fear seized the white steed. He ran off, then away, and I in grief left weak and helpless. I lost the sight of my eyes, my figure, my fair countenance, and my bloom, and I was a poor, blind old man, powerless, witless, and unhonoured. O Patrick, there is for thee my story, as everything happened to me without any falsehood, my going away, my adventures in full, and my return from the land of the young.